We're undergoing a restructuring to optimize shareholder returns, he announced during our brief meeting. Your role is being eliminated, effective immediately. My name is Clayton Riek. For 14 years, I built the Easter division of Northrise Apparel from the ground up into its most successful unit. Not through flashy pitches or trendy corporate lingo, but through reliability, integrity, and consistent results. I personally managed our key clients, knew their concerns, met their families, understood their nuances. The relationships I cultivated brought in $4.2 million in annual contracts. The new CEO, Brandon, had been with the company for only 8 weeks. Harvard Business School credentials, slick haircut, tailored suits. He never once asked about our client relationships or how we achieved 18% year-over-year growth while other divisions stagnated. He never seemed curious why Suncoast Financial and Vector Properties, our two most significant accounts, specifically requested me on quarterly calls. As security escorted me to my office to collect my things, I noticed Alicia from HR avoiding eye contact. She'd been with the company 15 years longer than me. The CFO, Thomas, walked by, then turned back. Clayton, he started, then fell silent. He simply gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder and walked away. I packed quietly. Family pictures. The fishing trophy the Vector team gave me after a retreat. A handwritten thank you note from Diane at Suncoast for expediting their order during a tight deadline. 14 years of work, reduced to a single cardboard box. I nodded politely to security, walked to my car without making a scene or uttering any threats. In the rearview mirror, I watched the sleek corporate tower grow smaller as I pulled away. For the first time in over a decade, I didn't feel the weight of 30 employees and millions in client contracts resting on my shoulders. That should have felt freeing, but instead just felt wrong. I joined Northrise when they were still operating from a warehouse in Charlotte. Back then, we were hustling for corporate uniform contract from regional banks and healthcare companies. The Easter division was bleeding money when they brought me in. I had 9 employees and a directive: fix it or shut it down. In those early years, I drove to every potential client within a 100-mile radius. I learned their pain points, late deliveries, poor quality, inconsistent sizing. I fixed all of it. My team grew from 15 to 25 employees. We moved into better offices. I promoted Janice from customer service to account management after watching her handle tough clients with grace. I hired Keith fresh out of design school when he showed me concepts that solved problems we didn't yet realize we had. My son, Dylan, was 12 when I started at Northrise. Now he's 26, working as an architect in Seattle. My wife, Jennifer, supported every late night, every weekend emergency, every last-minute trip to save an account. It's about building something that lasts, I used to tell her. And she believed me. 3 different CEOs came and went during my tenure, each one respecting what my team and I had built. The company grew from a regional supplier to a national competitor. And through it all, my division consistently led in growth and customer retention. But things changed after last year's merger. Kestrel Group acquired us and installed a new board. At first, I wasn't concerned. Results speak for themselves in business. But the cracks started to show. Brandon Kerr arrived with efficiency experts and a sea of spreadsheets. They failed to grasp the personal bonds that kept everything together. In meetings, they focused on customer acquisition costs, never client loyalty. 2 weeks before my termination, Brandon requested a report on all major accounts. I compiled the data, contract values, renewal dates, expansion opportunities. What I didn't include, because it can't be measured in a spreadsheet, was how I attended the funeral of the Suncoast procurement director's father, or how I personally inspected Vector's first major shipment at 2 a.m. to make sure everything was flawless. When Brandon's assistant scheduled our meeting for just 10 minutes, I knew. I'd seen it happen to others. I just never expected it would happen to me. The morning after I was let go, I sat in my home office staring at my phone. No messages from work. Former work. Jennifer brought me coffee and squeezed my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "They don't understand what they've done," I replied. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. Instead, I felt an unexpected clarity, something I hadn't felt in years. I opened my personal laptop and scrolled through my contacts, not the company's database, but my own list. Names, phone numbers, personal emails. 14 years of real, lasting connections. The first call came at 9:30 a.m., Diane from Suncoast Financial. Clayton, we just got a mass email about internal changes at Northrise. Please tell me you're not affected. I took a slow breath. I was let go yesterday. The silence on her end was telling. Who's taking over your accounts? She asked at last. They didn't say. I assume one of Brandon's new hires. Another pause. We've got our contract renewal coming up in 6 weeks. Look, I'll be honest with you. Our board only agreed to stay with Northrise last time because of you. Your pricing wasn't the lowest, but you always delivered. You solved problems before we even knew they existed. I didn't say anything right away. In the background, I could hear her tapping a pen, something she did when facing hard choices. I need to speak with my team, she said at last. Can I call you back at this number? Of course. After the call ended, I walked downstairs and sat at the kitchen table. Jennifer was making lunch. You okay? She asked. I nodded. I think I will be. My phone buzzed with a text from Keith, my design lead at Northrise. Brandon called an emergency meeting, asked for client contact details for your accounts. No one's giving him straight answers. What's going on? I set the phone down without replying. Later that afternoon, Harold from Vector Properties called, then Michael from Eastern Bank, and finally, Stephanie from Bright Healthcare Systems. The conversations all followed the same pattern. Surprise at my departure, concerns about the future, questions about their contracts. I was honest with each of them. I didn't speak ill of Northrise or Brandon. I simply answered their questions. Yes, I had been let go. No, I wasn't aware of any transition plans. Yes, I was considering my next steps. By evening, I had 5 missed calls from Brandon Kerr. I didn't return them. That night, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet of my own. Not with client details or contract data, but with possibilities, companies that had tried to recruit me over the years, competitors who might value someone with my experience and connections, and even the option to start my own consulting business. For 14 years, I had built bridges for Northrise Apparel. Now, I had to decide whether to burn those bridges or build new ones for myself. I chose the latter. 3 days after my termination, Brandon's texts turned into calls. I let them go to voicemail. On the 4th day, I finally picked up. Clayton, we need to talk, he said, his voice more strained than our last meeting. Several key accounts have raised concerns. I'm sure your team can handle it, I replied. That's the problem. Suncoast is threatening to pull their contract. They're saying they only worked with us because of you. I watched a cardinal land on the bird feeder outside my window. That's their choice, I said. Look, maybe we moved too quickly with these restructuring changes. The board's worried about the revenue impact. We could discuss a consulting arrangement to help with the transition. For a moment, I considered it. A consulting gig would be easy money while I figured out my next move. But something about his sudden shift in tone didn't sit right. I appreciate the offer, but I need some time. I'll think about it. That afternoon, I met Jerry Campbell for coffee. He'd been Northrise's CFO before the merger and had also been pushed out. He still had connections at corporate. Brandon's in full panic mode, Jerry said, stirring his coffee. Apparently, Suncoast and Vector both sent formal letters saying they won't renew their contracts. Did they say why? I asked. Loss of key relationship personnel. Leadership instability. Corporate speak for we only trusted Clayton. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of validation and concern for my former team. There's more, Jerry continued. Brandon told the board, you're sabotaging the company by calling clients and telling them to leave. I put my cup down. I haven't told anyone to do anything. I've just taken their calls and answered their questions honestly. That's not how Brandon's painting it, Jerry said. He's building a case that you violated your termination agreement and might try to claw back your severance. On my drive home, Brandon called again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, his tone had completely changed. Clayton, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We value everything you've built here. The board has authorized me to offer you a senior VP position, a better title and package than before. Call me back. We should discuss. That evening, Daniel Thompson called. He was the CEO of Summit Ridge Outfitters, a smaller competitor who had tried to recruit me twice over the years. I heard what happened at Northrise, he said. Their loss. My offer still stands, but I'd like to sweeten it. Senior VP, equity stake, and full control over your client relationships. I told him I needed a few days to think over all my options. That night, I received an email from Northrise's legal department claiming I was in violation of non-solicitation agreements. The language was aggressive, hinting at litigation if I didn't stop interfering with company relationships. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend without comment. The next morning, I got my answer. My lawyer friend, Paul Henderson, called early. This legal threat is paper thin, he said. They're trying to intimidate you. But I looked at your contract. You never signed a non-solicitation agreement. The standard non-compete only prevents you from joining a competitor for 6 months. It doesn't stop clients from following you. I remembered signing that contract 14 years ago when the company was still small. The old CEO had been clear. This just prevents you from taking our training and immediately joining the competition. Nothing about client relationships. So, I've done nothing wrong legally? I asked. Not a thing, Paul replied. In fact, if they pursue this, we could counter for wrongful termination, the abrupt nature, the lack of a transition plan for a senior leader. Courts don't look kindly on that. I thanked him and hung up, just as an email from Janice at Northrise arrived. Subject line, you should know this. She had attached an internal presentation from 2 weeks before my termination. Brandon had outlined a full restructuring plan, which included eliminating my position regardless of performance, replacing experienced staff with cheaper, recent graduates, and raising prices on long-term clients by 15% once contracts were renewed. A note on slide 12 read, relationship-dependent business model presents significant risk. Need to transition to system-dependent model. To maximize margins, they hadn't fired me because I was underperforming. They had fired me because I was succeeding in a way that didn't fit their spreadsheet vision. More troubling was a list of team reduction targets. Keith, Janice, and 3 others from my division marked for termination once I was gone. I printed the document and sat with it at my kitchen table. Jennifer read over my shoulder. They're planning to dismantle everything you built, she said softly, and blame any fallout on me. I nodded as my phone buzzed with another text from Brandon. Board meeting tomorrow. Need to discuss reconciliation ASAP. Please call. I set the phone down and studied the presentation again. The last slide projected revenue after all the changes. 22% higher margins, assuming all clients stayed despite price hikes and service cuts. It was a house of cards. I called Daniel at Summit Ridge. I'm interested in your offer, I said, but with one condition. What's that? He asked. I want to bring my core team, 5 people in total. Done, he answered without hesitation. When can you start? 2 weeks, and I'll need official offer letters for all of us, I replied. That evening, I called Keith, then Janice, then the others. I explained everything. The termination, the restructuring plan, their names on the cut list, and Summit Ridge's offer. All 5 agreed immediately. I slept better that night than I had since the termination. I didn't return Brandon's calls or emails. Instead, I scheduled meetings with our top clients, not to poach them, but to check in as a friend. I met Diane from Suncoast for lunch near her office. We're not renewing with Northrise, she said before even ordering. The question is, where do we go next? I can't solicit your business right now, I explained. Legally, I need to be careful. She smiled. I understand. But hypothetically, if you were working somewhere that offered similar services, we'd definitely be interested in following you. By the end of the week, I had similar conversations with all 5 major clients. None of them had received calls from Brandon or anyone else at Northrise trying to salvage the relationships. Meanwhile, Summit Ridge sent formal offer letters to my team, and one by one, they submitted their resignations at Northrise. The following Monday, Brandon showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the garage working on my old Chevy when he pulled into the driveway in his Mercedes. We need to talk, Clayton, he said, anxiety clear on his face. This has gone too far. The board is breathing down my neck. Key team members are resigning. Clients are threatening to leave. Sounds challenging, I replied, wiping my hands on a rag. Unfortunately, I've accepted a position elsewhere. His face flushed. You're joining a competitor. That violates your non-compete. Summit Ridge isn't on the restricted list in my contract, I said. Paul Henderson confirmed it yesterday. You're talking to lawyers now, Clayton? Be reasonable. Whatever they're offering, we'll beat it. I closed the hood of my truck. It's not about the money, Brandon. It never was. Then what do you want? Name it. I looked at him directly for the first time. I want respect for 14 years of building something valuable. I want a conversation, not a 10-minute dismissal. I want my team protected, not targeted for elimination to pad some spreadsheet. His expression changed as he realized I knew about the restructuring plan. That was just a draft, he stammered. A scenario planning exercise. Goodbye, Brandon, I said, walking past him toward my house. The board will fight this, he called after me. We'll sue you, Summit Ridge, everyone involved. I turned back one last time. You could try. But before you do, ask yourself, what will cost shareholders more? Letting me walk away quietly or a public legal battle explaining why all your major clients and top talent left simultaneously? He had no answer. A week later, I started at Summit Ridge. 2 weeks after that, my non-compete period ended. Within a month, 4 of our 5 major clients from Northrise had signed new contracts with Summit Ridge, specifically requesting me as their account manager. I never called anyone else at Northrise. I never spoke ill of the company in public. I didn't have to. 6 months after I joined Summit Ridge, I was reviewing quarterly numbers in my new office when Daniel knocked on my door. You might want to see this, he said, placing his tablet in front of me. It was a financial news article about Northrise Apparel. The headline read, CEO Brandon Kerr steps down amid financial shortfall. The article detailed how Northrise had missed quarterly projections by 18%. The Eastern Division, my former territory, had seen nearly 40% of its business disappear. The board had accepted Brandon's resignation, effective immediately. I handed the tablet back without comment. You don't seem surprised, Daniel noted. Hard to build relationships on spreadsheets, I replied. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from Thomas, Northrise's CFO. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss recovery strategies. Your name came up. Would you consider a conversation? I didn't respond. Instead, I finalized our quarterly presentation for Suncoast Financial. Our team had delivered their new corporate uniforms 2 weeks ahead of schedule, and the feedback had been overwhelmingly positive. Diane had already introduced us to 2 other potential clients in their network. The next day, Jerry Campbell called. Thought you want to know, he said. Kestrel Group is trying to sell off Northrise. The stock's down 22% since you left. Who's buying? I asked. That's the thing. No takers yet. Word is they're trying to reach out to you through back channels. The board thinks you're the only one who can stabilize the client relationships. I thanked Jerry for the information. Later, I took my team out for lunch to celebrate our first 2 quarters of continuous growth. Keith showed sketches for a new product line, and Janice shared updates on client feedback. We discussed Summit Ridge's expansion plans. No one brought up Northrise. That evening, I received a direct email from Eleanor Barnes, Northrise's board chair. Clayton, the situation has become untenable. We made a significant error in judgment. Would you consider returning as CEO? Complete autonomy, a substantial equity stake, a board seat. Name your terms. I closed my laptop without replying. The next morning, I called a meeting with my team at Summit Ridge. I've been approached about returning to Northrise, I said plainly. I wanted you all to hear it from me first. I'm declining the offer. Keith nodded. Figured they'd try eventually. Janice smiled. Too little, too late. Exactly, I said. We're building something better here. That afternoon, I sent a brief email to Eleanor. I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. I'm committed to my current position. I wish Northrise the best moving forward. 3 days later, the news broke. Summit Ridge Outfitters had acquired Northrise Apparel's Eastern Division in a strategic asset purchase. The press release highlighted the move as reuniting key talent with established client relationships. Daniel had quietly negotiated the deal, paying a fraction of the original value for what had once been Northrise's crown jewel. The board had no choice. It was either sell to us or watch it collapse entirely. I never had to strike back directly. The market did it for me. 1 year after my termination from Northrise, I drove past their former Eastern Division office. The Summit Ridge logo now hung where the Northrise sign had once been. The building looked the same, but everything inside had changed. We had rehired some of the staff who'd been let go during Brandon's brief tenure. We'd recovered 3 more client relationships that had deteriorated after my departure. The division now generated more revenue under Summit Ridge than it ever had under Northrise. I parked across the street and watched employees leaving for the day. Familiar faces mixed with new ones. They looked happy, engaged, purposeful. While I got home, Jennifer was in the kitchen making dinner. I drove by the old office today, I told her. She studied my expression. Nostalgia or closure? Closure, I replied. Did you know it's been exactly 1 year? She nodded. I remembered. That's why I made your favorite tonight. Over dinner, Dylan called from Seattle to share news about a major project his architecture firm had landed. How's the new job going, Dad? He asked. Good. Building something that will last, I replied. The same words I'd used for 14 years at Northrise, but this time, I knew it was true. Later that evening, I received a text from Jerry Campbell. Northrise's remaining divisions just got acquired by Gravora Group. Clean sweep. Nothing left of the original company. I set my phone down and walked out to the deck. The spring air was warm, filled with possibility. I thought about Brandon and wondered briefly what he was doing now. I hoped he'd learned something, though I doubted it. I thought about all those years building bridges for a company that didn't value them. The late nights, missed family dinners, postponed vacations. The sacrifices had been real, but so were the relationships I'd built. In the end, those relationships had followed me. Not because I'd asked them to, but because we'd built something authentic together. No spreadsheet could capture that value. No restructuring could erase it. The next morning, I arrived at Summit Ridge early. I reviewed our quarterly projections, now 30% above target. I checked our client retention numbers, 97%, the highest in company history. Daniel stopped by my office. Board approved your proposal, he said. The employee ownership program starts next quarter. Keith and Janice will head up the implementation team. I nodded. They'll do it right. You know, Daniel said, leaning against the door frame. When all this started, I thought we were just getting a talented executive and some lucrative client relationships. I didn't realize we were getting a completely different way of doing business. Relationships over transactions, I replied. Always. After he left, I opened my desk drawer and took out the fishing trophy Vector Properties had given me years ago. I placed it on my shelf next to new photos of my team at Summit Ridge. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need vindication. I just needed to build something that would last. This time I had.